I feel like a lot of the world is a lot of gray, and we want things to be in black and white. And I have always rejected that. And, I didn't really want to call myself non-binary for a while because I just felt like, so that's a specific kind of person that is putting themselves out there politically that way. And I don't want to take away from those people. And then I thought to myself, except that that's you, Liz. Like, you aren't male or female. You don't feel male or female. And I would definitely say in my dynamic with Gabriel, we have a very interesting fluid change of male and female between the two of us at all times.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from all over the world to hear their personal journeys of self-discovery through the lenses of love, sex, and relationships.
Our mission is to show people that they're not alone and to inspire them to embrace their true selves so that together we can open minds and live authentically without shame.
We believe everyone's story is powerful and beautiful, yet it's important to remember that everyone does life a little bit differently and that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we aren't doctors. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 373. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have a beautiful conversation with Lizz and Gabriel for you. Before we jump into that, we want to just say Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy 2025.
We made it.
We made it. And this year has a lot in store for us, I'm sure.
I think it's going to be a good year. I'm maintaining my optimism.
I hope so. Me too.
You're sick right now.
I know.
Getting it out of the way. So the rest of 2025, no more sicknesses.
I know. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Today, as I said, we have a wonderful conversation with Lizz and Gabriel for you. They've been together about 3 years. Lizz has been a lifelong polyamorous since she was a teenager. She was married for around 20 years, and they had a significant partnership with another person during that time as well. A few years ago, her husband passed away. And then shortly after that, she met Gabe.
And Gabe comes to the partnership much newer to non-monogamy. His real first exposure to this was when he met Lizz. By the way, roller skating.
Yes, roller skating.
Our adult roller skating class, which is absolutely amazing.
It is.
I'm thinking about picking up the roller skating myself.
Okay, let's go for it. Go for it.
Anyway, Gabe grew up very Catholic with a whole different mindset around relationships than Lizz did. But actually, once they met, as you'll see, he found it really fit best for him. So this is an amazing conversation. We're just super grateful to both Lizz and Gabriel for coming on and sharing their story with us today. And also a huge shout out to former guest Sonia from way back on episode 193 for putting us in touch with Lizz. Just amazing. So thank you. And if you want to go check out that episode, you might notice something common about Lizz and Sonia. They both have partners named Gabriel,
yes.
But they're different Gabriels. So just don't get confused.
Yes, different people.
All right. Back to this conversation. Just again, wanted to say thank you to Lizz and Gabriel for coming on. And we're just excited to get this story out there.
For anyone who is a premium subscriber, we're going to jump right into the interview now. And for anyone who is not a premium subscriber, we usually have a couple of announcements up here at the beginning of the episode. But today we're going to give you another taste of the premium subscription and skip all of those announcements. But we did want to remind you, if you want to sign up for the premium subscription, just go over to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, scroll down on the homepage, and you can sign up right there.
The other way you can listen to these episodes without announcements up front is by joining our virtual community. You hear us talk about it during our announcements that we normally announce.
Yes.
During the announcements phase of the show.
Yes.
But again, we're skipping that. So just a reminder, if you do join the community for $5 a month, you also get access to these episodes without announcements up front. So multiple ways to, as my dad used to say, multiple ways to skin a cat.
Way to throw that in there.
I don't know if that's a saying that everybody else grew up with, but that was in my household. So more than one way to skin a cat here. And we'd love to have you check out either the premium subscription or our virtual community. Yeah.
You're welcome for that little fun tidbit.
You're telling the listeners they're welcome.
Yes, yes.
Emma's been dealing with this shitter hole, a long time.
A long time. To find more information about the community, go over to the community tab of our website and you can find everything right there. Also, while you're on our website, go over to the contact page and we would absolutely love to hear from you. Send us a voicemail, send us an email if you'd like to be a guest on the show, or if you have any feedback for us, reach out to us. We would love to hear from you.
And the last thing we'll tell you to do on our website is check out the podcast tab. That's where you'll find show notes for today's show and every other podcast we've had, which includes photos of our guests, including to today's. including 2 days.
Yes.
Too many tutus in there. Including today's guests, Lizz and Gabriel, as well as links to everything that they talk about today. So please check it out. And with that, we are going to jump into the conversation with Lizz and Gabriel.
Let's go.
All right, welcome to the podcast, Lizz and Gabe. We're super excited to chat today. First, a shout out to previous guests who introduced us to you, Sonia and Gabe, which I should have looked up their podcast episode, but it'll be in the show notes for anyone listening. So introduced via other amazing guests and community members. So welcome to the show.
Yes, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
We'd love for you to start by just introducing yourselves.
Liz, you go first.
Oh, okay. I go first. My name is Liz, and I am a lifelong polyamorist, and I am 50, and this is Gabriel.
My name's Gabriel. I'm new to the scene. I guess been polyamorous since we've been together.
Yeah.
And it's just almost like 3 years.
I know.
Corruption. I smell corruption in the air. Well, we're super excited to chat today because we've got we always love it when we kind of have two different stories that come together. And so we were gonna start with Liz, since you were telling us off air that this is, as you said just a moment ago, lifelong. You kind of came to relationships in a non-monogamous fashion, and we thought we'd start there and then figure out how you and Gabe came together and what you're building together.
That sounds great. I came out as bisexual when I was 14, but I didn't know what to call the rest of my relationship identity because we didn't have a word for it back then. All I knew was I didn't have any interest in closed relationships. So anybody I ever met, I would always say, I'm only interested in having open relationships. And if that's not something that you're able to do and you're not comfortable with, then we shouldn't be involved in a relationship together. And that's just how I carried on my entire life. And then when the term polyamory became more well utilized, then I said, well, I guess that's what I am too. And then there's been some long-term relationships that I've had, nesting partners that have gone on for years. I was married for 20 years to my last nesting partner, Josh, and we started our relationship non-monogamous because that's just the way I always ran things. And it was new for him too. But when I first met him and explained, this is who I am, this is how I run my life, he thought, wow, that actually makes a lot of sense. And I'd like to do that too. And so we were non-monogamous our whole relationship. We had a third person in our life for about 7 years who now we use the term platonic partner. At the time, we didn't really have a word for it again. So Josh and I just referred to Ricardo as our husband. And the joke in my family, which I've always been so blessed, my family's always been completely accepting of me. The joke with my family was always that Ricardo was the favorite husband. My nana would introduce him to people as, this is my favorite grandson. He's my granddaughter's husband, my favorite one of them. They'd be so confused. I know, what is this lady trying to explain? Yeah, so he was with us for 7 years, and then he went his separate way. But Ricardo and I are still close, and I still consider him my platonic partner. We just don't live together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I'd love to back up for a moment if you're good with it, because I'm curious, when you come to relationships at such an early age and even today it's, fairly radical, and to be doing this when you were, you said again off air that it was like when you were 14, it was your first sort of open way of relating. And I'm curious, how did that go? Telling people in middle school, early high school, like, hey, I want to be in an open relationship. How did that go?
So I guess first, I've always been a person who marches to my own drum. And I did associate with people when I was 14 who were quite a bit older than me. And most of my friend group was at least at the end of high school, if not in college. And a lot of them had already had experience with that kind of relationship structure. Again, not necessarily having any terms for it.
Mm-hmm.
So it never really, no one ever kind of thought to say, "Oh, that's crazy. That's so strange." That was never the reaction I ever got from any of the people that I would be dating. And I think it's just because of the people that I associate with. I would also like to mention this was in rural Maine. I come from a town of 1,000 people.
Yeah, that's context. That's important.
There was a local university, the University of Maine, and that's where most of my friends hung out. And then I left to go to college early at 16. So I went to a very unusual college called Simon's Rock. And again, it was considered kind of normal to be in an open relationship. No one batted an eye.
Huh. Wow. That's really fascinating. I mean, growing up in such a small town and having a open relating in any way sort of be not necessarily the norm, but not really like that controversial or not much of an issue is really amazing, especially, 30 years ago.
Well, and I'm curious if you had any role models or anything like in your childhood, adolescence, that even if there wasn't language, that helped put you on that path.
I'm going to say, because my parents were so open and general to everything, especially when it came to sexuality. When I was really young, they had the Encyclopedia of Sex available for my brother and I when we were extremely young. And they were like, just, if you want to pick it up and read it, and if you've got any questions, come to us. But it was a really great series of books, and I never had any questions. And there was never any fear or negativity around sex in my household. And so when I came out as bisexual, that wasn't a large issue for anybody. And then when very soon into my first long-term relationship with my girlfriend in high school, she started dating another guy. And that, to my parents, they were just kind of like, well, to each his own, whatever. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. So yeah, I think a lot of it just had to do with having really wonderfully open-minded parents when it came to sexuality in general, and never making me feel like anything was going to ever be a problem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. But I think so. When you're brought up like that, it makes it easier to figure out your own path, right? Like, because you can have choice in that of like, wait, I can choose, I can try this on and see how it fits, and I won't be, shamed for it.
And I can make mistakes, right? You can try something, and if it blows up, no one's going to be like, well, told you so. Just be like, oh, that's how we learn, or that's a lesson, or whatever it is. So that's amazing. That's an amazing way to grow up, Liz. Yeah.
I feel really lucky. I really, really do.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like that, as you kind of said, like that took you through sort of all of your relationships since the beginning and into your marriage, which you said also was open. And I'm just curious, maybe over the last, 30 or so years that you've been doing this, what is sort of the vibe or the style of being open looked like, or like on maybe the day to day or the week to week, what sort of approach you have taken to it?
Well, I definitely would like to mention something that so many of us polyamorous people state, which is people think that we're having tons and tons of relationships all the time. And the fact of the matter is, it's usually pretty hard for me to find somebody I really want to have a very serious relationship with. So there really haven't been that many over the years. That's the truth, right? Like there've been a few, and there've been a few flings. And I am a person who I really do actually enjoy pretty, like, it's not, it's kind of like one night stands are fun. Friends with benefits are fun. I like sex for sex sake. I am definitely open to all kinds of different experiences just for the experience. And that's something that I always wanted to be able to explore, no matter who my other partner was. But I always want them to be able to explore it too. And if a relationship develops, that's great. It's just the fact of the matter is, it's just usually not that common for me to find somebody I really jive with that well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To where it moves from a like casual, one night stand or a hookup to more of like an ongoing relationship or partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes total sense. Mm-hmm. And so a few years ago, you and Gabe crossed paths. How did you two meet one another? And it sounds like, Gabe, for you, this was not how you were relating before.
I didn't have the words to kind of describe how I was interacting with the world. And when I met Liz and she introduced me to her world and what she was doing, that's when I kind of retroactively looked back at my life and was like, oh, okay, that makes sense now. But we met roller skating, which is really fun. We met at an adult roller skating class, and yeah, it was my first time, her first time. We were both trying something new.
We were virgins.
And we just started talking, shooting the shit. And then the next class, you asked for my number, and then I asked you out on a date afterwards. And then we were just, the rest is history. Well, now we're 3 years in the future, and here we are. But yeah, when I first met Liz and when we had first started talking, she was explaining kind of what she just said right now, and how she's always come into life and in relationships with people. And it really made me think about how I grew up in a very Catholic, traditional sense. Get married, have kids, be with one person, stick with that person for the rest of your life. There's no such thing as divorce type of thing. And I was in that mindset all from like high school to now, just being like, I'm going to be with one person. That's the way it should be. And if you're not doing it like that, then there's something wrong with you. And I think because I was trying to put myself in that box, it actually ended up hurting me a lot, where not only was I hurting other people that I was in relationships with when I was younger by not being faithful, but when I tried to really just focus on one person and be with one person, I feel like it kind of ended up making me a little more depressed because I was closing myself off from all kinds of relationships to try and overcorrect my behavior in the past. So like I cut myself off from friends. I wouldn't try to make new friendships with people or new relationships with people in any sense of the matter, because I was always worried that it might develop into me catching feelings for them or vice versa. And I didn't want to do that. And it wasn't until Liz and I met that I was like, oh, this makes sense. You probably were a polyamorous person that you just didn't realize it because you didn't have anyone in your life to show you that that was okay. This is a okay way to live, and love could come from any direction, and you should be open to it if that's what you want, if that's what makes you happy. And now I feel very happy in all the relationships that I have, and the ability to pursue new relationships, whether they're very serious and intimate and deep or kind of more on the platonic scale. It's being able to be open to all those options that really, I guess, fulfills me as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing all of that. And it sounds like you kind of always felt this way, didn't have the language for it, and it sounds like, did you try to do that in relationships but didn't know how, or just didn't realize that was even available?
I think, yeah, when looking back at my earlier relationships, I very much enjoyed having more, I guess, deeper connections with people, as many people as I can. And a lot of times that came across as me being unfaithful.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm allowing myself to feel deeper for more people, or just to not close myself off to that, I'm loving life a little bit more now.
I'd also like to say, I think one of the things that's been interesting in being with Gabriel for me is being with somebody who's a lot more demisexual than I am, because Josh wasn't. My last husband was very much like me. And we had a lot of the same sexual energy as far as what kind of relationships we would pursue, and we often pursued. And I'm not trying to say that we were having relationships consistently that weren't very deep. We just had no problem, either one of us, basically just having something that was much more focused on a sexual relationship, and everyone knew that, and no one was getting hurt, and then moving on. And Gabriel is very demi in a lot of ways. And it's been really interesting to be with somebody who's like that for me.
Yeah.
So that's been an interesting difference.
Yeah. Well, and it made me think too, as Gabe was talking, right, that this place of being demisexual where you're sort of, even if the sexual piece never comes, you're forming these deep conversations, deep thoughts, just going, maybe again, just using this word deep, but like going deeper with people than you normally do in a friendship. And if you're in another relationship or a romantic partnership and you start to see, or you start to be that person who's going deeper, that's a scary place to be, because we don't have a lot of framework for that. And so I really kind of had a lot of empathy there, Gabe, where you were talking about, like, I would distance myself, because if I start to go deep, then I feel like I'm cheating, or I'm afraid maybe deeper feelings will come, and then maybe it will lead to sex. And I think there's not a lot of examples in our world where you can say, I can be a really deep, even intimate friend with you that doesn't necessarily escalate to sex or doesn't escalate to something else. It just is for the sake of what it is. And I think as we start to like tear apart what we can do with relationships, it starts to be less scary, right? You can say, well, I can have a really deep friendship and I'm not necessarily afraid that I'm going to go to another level or cheat or whatever. But we don't have a lot of that framework growing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. That is, that's it completely. I found myself having a lot of deeper friendships that I wanted to maintain, but because of where I was in life and the company I kept was telling me what I should be doing, I unfortunately listened to them and then ended up miserable at the end of it.
Yeah. And so how, over the last 3 years, or maybe even just in that first couple months or so after you and Lizz meeting at the roller rink, which I think is amazing.
Yes. And then it happened to be both your first times.
Right. How did it start to look between you two as you're bringing together brand new to non-monogamy and a couple of decades of experience? Like, bringing those two worlds together, that's big.
The irony is that this one took to it like a duck to water and got herself a girlfriend so fast that it threw me for a loop. So when we first got together, you have to understand I was very recently widowed. Josh had only passed away about 6 months beforehand. And I knew that I emotionally was not able to handle my nesting partner being with a very serious relationship, because it just was going to be too much for me emotionally to process at that point. And Gabriel said, well, what happens if I meet somebody? I said, well, that's kind of the beauty of non-monogamy, is you can say, hey, I know you're not really going to be unavailable later, so can you just wait a little bit and I'll be back and we'll talk about this in a couple months. But, out of respect to my nesting partner, I'm trying not to start very serious relationships right now. And, we talked about that. And he seems to understand that that's where I was at. And he didn't seem to feel like he was being hemmed in by that. Mm-hmm. And then he was going to California to visit his family, and he hadn't seen them in a long time. And I wanted him to reconnect with them on a one-on-one basis without a new partner, because that is going to be different than reconnecting just you. And there's some family stuff that was important and had to be dealt with. And then I said, and also, you can reconnect with your old friends. I didn't realize how much he was going to reconnect with those old friends.
Well, it sounds like there was a lot of history of, hey, we have this connection, we don't know what to do with it. And now you're like, look, I know what to do with it now.
Well, it gets even better than that. I'll let him take over, because this is where his part of the story comes in.
So the old friend in question was my ex-girlfriend, and we had been together for a couple years when I was living in California, and then we'd broken up, kind of lost contact, and then I moved to Florida in 2020. And
great time to move, by the way.
Yeah, right before the pandemic. It was perfect. And I moved to Florida with another girl, or my then girlfriend. and kind of lost contact with a lot of old people. I didn't really talk to any of my old friends that I knew from high school and college, and a lot of family members too. I just 2020 was kind of the moment where I ended up really closing myself off, and it was in part because I, again, with my girlfriend that I moved to Florida with, I wanted to just be focused on them. And then also there was a lot of family drama that happened, and also drama in my friend group that had happened. So I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm moving away, not talking to anyone, just focusing on working and my new partner. And it wasn't until 2022, the beginning of 22, that her and we ended up breaking up. And a couple months later is when I met you. And then a couple months after that is when I went back to California to visit family. And one of the people that I was missing a lot when I was isolating was my ex-girlfriend. And we ended up reconnecting on Instagram, and it wasn't very like flirty or anything. We were just kind of talking like, oh, I've missed you. It's been such a long time. How are you doing? How's Florida? How's California? That kind of thing, going back and forth. And when I had the opportunity to go back to California, I had reached out to her to see if we could like reconnect, hang out, shoot the shit. And we did. And then once we saw each other, things just kind of.
For anyone listening, Liz is smirking.
and I believe mimicking what probably happened as the new girlfriend, the old girlfriend clawed upon him.
Yeah. Also, he calls me that night very concerned because he had made the promise to me that he was going to tell anybody that they've got to wait. And he's saying, but we've reconnected, and her and her wife are polyamorous too, and we just have these feelings for each other, and I don't know what to do. And we didn't do anything. And I said, oh, you didn't do anything? And he goes, well, we might have kissed. I'm like, well, that's something. And then basically by the end of the conversation, I was like, this train has left the station. If I get in the way of you reconnecting with this old girlfriend, you're going to be angry at me for the rest of your life. I will figure out how to deal with this. You go do what you need to do. Thinking it would be a one-night stand. Oops.
Yeah, and just again, for context, like, Gabe, you had moved to Florida, lived in Florida for 2 years with this other partner, broke up with them a few months before then, and Liz is coming out of 6 months from her previous husband passing away. You meet each other in the beginning of 2022, and then like with those backgrounds, which is not, I mean, that's a lot bringing into that relationship at the beginning, and then going into this a couple of months later. So you're still new. Like now I'm thinking like we're mid 2022, like you're still fairly new coming back together, still learning the language, learning this all, and
learning each other.
It's not easy. And I love how you two are like talking about it, trying to figure it out and being like, okay, well, and making the decisions that you feel are best for the relationship in some ways, like in that moment of like, Liz, I heard you say like, if I get in the way of this, I'm afraid that it will cause resentment or for a long time. And like, I don't want to do that. And it sounds like the relationship also is new enough that maybe you're like, let's figure this out. Let's see where it goes.
I think one of the things when Liz was explaining back when we first started dating, and Liz was explaining the whole polyamory thing, what made me take to it, I guess, was this idea of, and I think this is more the way we define our relationship rather than just polyamory as a whole, but you were coming at it and I was coming at it as a point of, we are just going to be very open and communicative of our feelings, whether that be like jealousy, love, anger,
Conversion.
frustration and just coming at it as a team and just trying to communicate with each other what's going on, and coming at it with not trying to influence the other person in any way, but just kind of making a promise to each other to really know what we're feeling at the moment, and if not, then help the other person kind of talk through what's going through their heads so that we could both make a decision in the relationship that benefits both of us or takes care of each of our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So when I had reconnected with my ex back in California, I was explaining to Liz that I had these emotions that I didn't realize were there, but I was trying my best to reassure Liz that I still cherish this relationship that we have. And I just wanted to kind of put everything that I had on the table and explain it in hopefully a way that she would understand. And I think it was hard for you, but you did. And it helped our relationships, or just that was a tough time.
It was hard.
Yeah.
There were other issues too. So I had always had wonderful relationships with my metas, or at least, passable relations. Like we got along fine, like whatever. And it very quickly after he got back from California and they had announced each other to be boyfriend and girlfriend immediately, I found that this woman was really not interested in having any semblance of a relationship with me. And I wasn't sure why, but I figured it had something to do with her own emotional state. But it was a new thing for me, and that had never happened.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never basically had a meta say, no, we are not going to interact. I'm not going to talk to you. So, okay. That was a lot for me to wrap my head around. I had a lot of kind of work I had to do on how that didn't really reflect on me. It had nothing to do with me. I actually got a polyamory coach, which is kind of funny considering how long I've been at this. But shout out to Heidi Savell. She's fantastic. And she made an observation that was mind blowing for me at the time, because I had a lot of reservations about his particular relationship with this person based on information that she had given me directly. She had told me directly. And so I thought, I don't know if this is going to be a healthy relationship for him. And her insight was, do you understand why you get so dysregulated by this fear? It's because the last partner you had, when they'd made decisions that were unhealthy for them, those decisions were going to kill them. Because Josh was an alcoholic. So when he made bad decisions, it wasn't just a bad decision that was going to leave him with some life lessons. It was going to lead to his demise. And it did. She's like, so when you're looking at Gabriel, your new partner, and you're thinking he's making a poor decision here, you're getting dysregulated because you're worried that it's going to kill him, but it ain't. All it's going to do is teach him some life lessons. And my mind was just like, oh my God, she's right. But that's one of those beautiful things about polyamory, right? It's like we have to confront what these things are that are making us uncomfortable, and we learn from them. Mm-hmm. Similarly, when I was so upset about him starting the relationship in the beginning, I had to say to myself, why weren't you ready? Why weren't you ready to deal with that? And what I realized was it was a fear of abandonment, because I was still not acknowledging that I felt abandoned by Josh. And that was a huge breakthrough for me mentally, and a huge breakthrough in my grief journey. And so I said to his girlfriend at the time when we were still talking, I said, I'm actually really thankful that this has all happened, because it's actually accelerated some of my processing of my grief. And that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm just so grateful that you both shared this, because, as you kind of told this story from the beginning where, I think it'd be easy for somebody listening to be like, okay, Liz, you've got so many years of experience with non-monogamy, and Gabe goes out and meets up with his ex-girlfriend, and they start things up again. Why on earth would you struggle, right? Like, you've had so much experience, and to say, like, I think this is just a reminder to all of us that like the amount of time that we've had doing something doesn't necessarily mean that it's still not challenging, or that there aren't new things that get introduced, right? Perhaps if this had happened 10 years ago, no big deal. But right, the circumstances you were in, what you had gone through, what you just kind of talked through about, why Gabe making choices that are risky for him land for you is like life or death, right? Like, so who we are is not just a function of like how long we've been non-monogamous or how long we've been doing anything. Like there's so much goes into that. And I think it's amazing that like the way that you two were able to do that and like grow through that together. Like, I don't know. It was incredible to me.
Also, this guy's an amazing communicator.
That helps. That helps. Like, yeah.
Well, and I think you kind of talked about that, right? When the call where you call up and say like, I don't know, I have these feelings and we reconnected and I'm so afraid, I don't want to hurt you, right? And it's like, those are experiences that Emma and I have both had of this. You don't know, like, we're so programmed for monogamy that if I have a feeling for somebody else, even if I think somebody else is attractive, it's like, well, what does that mean? Oh, that must mean I don't think they're just like the whole thing falls apart. And it's like proving to yourself that that's not necessarily the case, that you can tell somebody this, they can receive it with hard feelings, and all of that can coexist with, we work through it, we come together, maybe even closer on the other side, which is not something we're taught or shown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, Liz, you shared a little bit about what was going on for you. And Gabe, I'm curious on this, in the first like 6-8 months of your relationship, two of you, like how you reconnect with this ex-girlfriend, and then how does it go for you? You're also trying to build this relatively new relationship with Liz too. And it's a lot to navigate.
Yeah, it definitely was.
I think you felt overwhelmed sometimes.
Yeah, there were a lot of times when I felt overwhelmed. I think it definitely helped that it was more of a long distance partnership, because we had that time in California, and then I had to move back to Florida. So what we did was just have like phone calls or video chats once a week, or try to have them at least once a week. And I think honestly that made it easier for me, because it wasn't so consuming, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. There was some natural distance just because of the actual physical distance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm also going to throw something out there that I've thought about that situation, is I think also because this was an older relationship rekindled, that was a very different scenario.
Totally.
He wasn't going through the same type of NRE that he would have had it been a new person.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it was a lot easier because we were in full blown NRE still.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea of like, if he had someone, I told him this back in the day when he first was getting back together with her, I said, if she were local, I don't know if I could stay with you, because there would have been so much to try to parse so quickly.
Yeah.
But we were able to kind of have more space and time to parse through things. And it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm so excited about being with her too. How can I split up my time between the two of you? You know, that wasn't even a worry. Thank goodness. Had it been, we just started our relationship, he starts a whole brand new relationship only 2 months later, that's local, I don't know if our relationship would have survived. I'm not, I'm trying to be negative. I'm just being honest.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. No, it's a lot to try to balance, right? And NRE, we talk about it as, I think, one of the most potent legal drugs you can get into. And it is. And I think trying to be on NRE with multiple people at the same time, that's a lot of energy. And that's a lot of emotions
There's a lot with one person.
Yeah.
Right.
And also at the same time, you're then sorting out, potential jealousy, like friction points, as well as the amazing stuff. Like it's just a lot, just almost objectively a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious where this sort of took you to, and Gabe, at some point you're also facing Liz, probably meeting other people, and you're both doing the dating and finding other partners. And I'm curious how the two of you moved forward. No, Liz is like, nope.
Well, so the one person I did meet that I really jived with, this is about a year into our relationship, I think. A little bit, yeah, around there. She and I met on a dating app, and we'd been talking, and she was going through a really vicious divorce with her wife. And she lives in a state far away as well. And we were really, we were really connecting nicely. But I am always a person who says, it really depends on when I meet you, whether or not I'm going to be actually attracted to you and want to actually be with you in a sexual manner. And the very second I laid eyes on her, I was like, oh boy, yes, we are on. This is great. And we had a fantastic first evening together. But there was this thing that happened where all of a sudden I saw pain in her eyes because she was going through so much pain. And I stopped everything that was going on and I just held on to her while she was crying. And I thought, maybe we're not supposed to be romantic partners. Maybe I got confused here. Maybe this isn't where we're supposed to be going with this. And we talked it out. And she's new to polyamory as well. And I was like, well, you're here in town, but she works in town sometimes. I said, why don't you meet Gabriel tomorrow? She's like, yeah, sure. So we all got together and hung out and having fun and having some whiskey. And we all ended up in bed together. So she's our joint long distance partner still. We went through a period where we were really seeing a lot more of her. She was here more often. We were much more communicative. There's a lot more communication going on, but we were always very cognizant of trying to maintain that he has his own separate relationship with her. I have my own separate relationship with her. And then we have the relationship that's all three of us. We've always been really trying to be cognizant of that. But I know for myself, she and I are not communicating as much as we used to for her reasons. She's dealing with some stuff and she's kind of withdrawing, and that's what she needs to do. So over the last few months, I've been thinking of her more as like a comet again, which is kind of how I saw her at first. And then we got much more intimate and together. And now I see her a little bit more like that. We call her our partner still, but I don't know. There hasn't been as much communication.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something keeps coming up for me for both of you, but I think particularly Liz, I'm just kind of struck by and again, I don't have like exactly the right words, but your ability to hold not just depth, but also like a loose grip on it, right? You meet this person, you're like
malleable,
you said,
maybe.
Yeah, that you meet and you're like, wow, super attracted, definitely want this. And then partway through it, you're like, but maybe this isn't the right fit, right? Like to be able to have like the intensity of the desire, but also the ability to not hold on to it so tight that you squish it or break it. And I'm just curious. I don't know if there's a question in there. It was just, it seems like you've moved through a lot of your life in that way of very intentional, but not forcing. I don't know.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I would also say, because the relationship anarchist label is a fairly new one that people are utilizing. And I think of myself as fitting that mold because I don't value a best friend intimate relationship any more or less than I do my relationship with Gabriel. Mm-hmm. There's going to be prioritizing of time and effort, but my value of that, I still call Ricardo my other husband, and we don't really talk that much, really. But when we're together, it's very intimate, and I also do, I think in my life, I want to be recognizing that people change and relationships change. And like my relationship with Gabriel has changed and it will continue to change. Like people they're not static. And I'm okay with that. And I've always been okay with that, I think.
Yeah.
I definitely think that's what drew me to you and I guess now our lifestyle is that's kind of how I've always felt as far as relationships with other people. You could have, clear definitions, but I think interacting with another person, just you and another person, that relationship is a relationship, whether you define it as concrete or not. And being able to kind of fluidly be in a relationship like that with any person, I think is something that we're both good at as far as giving people space or learning to have grace for other people and come at these, whatever relationships are, with either forgiveness or wanting more. Yeah, I think think that that's something that we're both good at, and I think that's definitely a strong base of our relationship.
I think so, but I also think that you have also grown in your ability to set good boundaries for yourself too. So it's like you, the other person, whoever they are, you can't do that thing to me because that's a hurtful thing, and I'm not going to allow you to do that hurtful thing. And I think that that's a huge growth that I've seen in you, where you are able to also be cognizant of the space that is a person's not allowed to cross and hurt you. And I love seeing that growth in you. So
Yeah. That idea that yeah, people are people and they're going to be malleable and free and flexible, but there is a limit to what you're willing to sort of absorb on the receiving end of that. Yeah. And that at a certain point you can say, well, that's fine. That's how you need to be. And now we need to be like this. We need to be at bigger distance, or we need to not be in communication, because where you're at and where I'm at, they are oil and water, as it were.
I'm curious kind of where you two have landed today. I know it sounds like you have this long distance partner comment relationship. Do you have any other dynamics in your orbit at the moment?
I don't, but Gabriel does.
Yeah. I have another partner that lives a little bit closer.
They graduated partner. Ooh, wow.
I said partner, but it's the relations. We went on a couple dates, more than a couple dates, and we actually met through you.
She's a really old friend of mine. We've been friends for almost 20 years. She's poly. She and her husband are fairly close to us, about an hour away. And we were having a birthday party. Some shenanigans went down, and I was like, well, maybe you two should. And ta-da, here we are.
So actually, I'm not even sure how long it's been, but
It's been a while.
couple months, yeah.
6 months. That's it. Yeah.
I'm fine.
Also, I'd also like to point out a really amusing thing about Gabriel is he seems to pull all the lesbians. We both identify as non-binary, even though we both present, like I present fairly female and he presents fairly male. That's how we both identify. And the his ex-girlfriend in California, a lesbian. I'm primarily attracted to women. Why do I keep marrying men? And then the woman he's dating now, and then our long distance partner, a vowed lesbian.
Wow. The variety is the spice of life, I suppose. So amazing. Well, and I'm curious, even just like bigger picture, not necessarily just focusing on like the types or what partnerships exist, but sort of where you two have landed in terms of your ethos, how you two approach this and what it looks like on the day to day, week to week. Are you like, it sounds like you have parties and they're fluid parties. People can hang out and there can be sex. There cannot be sex. I'm just curious, like, what is this as you're moving through your day and your world? What does it look like in terms of like your freedom and your just ability to be yourselves?
I think, relatively free as long as we communicate. That's really the thing that kind of holds us together.
Yeah, and we don't. So people often talk about what are your rules and what are your boundaries. We don't really have any rules, and as far as boundaries, it's just respecting each other, right? So like listening to each other and hearing the other person and not being defensive, and and I think we do an exceedingly good job of that, of listening to each other's feelings of discomfort about whatever. And then saying, okay, well, I hear you, and this is something I'm going to consider, but this is my reality and the way I'm seeing things. And I think I learned with my first marriage that I just felt rules were silly. Rules are just something that's going to fall apart at some point. So why bother? The most important thing is just having really good lines of communication. And that doesn't mean that you have to tell me that you're going to do something with somebody ahead of time, because I know like stuff happens. Like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this fun thing I wasn't planning on doing earlier today. And I'm fine with that happening. Just tell me about it afterward, right? And of course, obviously, everyone should be being safe. So like I had somebody, TikTok has become my new dating app. And I had a TikTok person that I connected with, and we purposefully planned a afternoon of spicy fun times. And we both got tested before that because we hadn't been tested. Either one of us hadn't been tested in a while. But you know, if something's going to happen last minute, just be safe. I think that's the only rule that we have.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Be safe.
Yeah.
And communicate about it.
And communicate about it later. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm just curious too. I know you. I know this could probably be a whole conversation in and of itself. So I don't mean to like pull this in at the end, but you did mention a little bit ago that you both identify as non-binary now today. And I'm curious if you'd be open to just like talking a little bit about that, because that is a big part of who you both are too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I always had a really hard time with the concept of being a girl.
Mhm.
And when I was younger, I went through some periods where I was exceedingly butch looking, and I got called sir all the time. And I enjoyed that. I didn't have a problem with that. But I also, as I got through different periods of my life, I had a little bit more fun playing with the concept of being a girl. But I've always thought of these things as concepts. And I did a lot of research in college on different kinds of gender identity because it was interesting to me, because I didn't feel like I ever conformed to the gender identity. I also am a person who very firmly believes we should tear down all paradigms. I don't like the idea of butch and femme. I don't like the idea of male and female. I like let's just tear it all down. Let's tear it all down. And even when I was younger, when I first came out, I was like, I'm a lesbian. And then it's like, it's more complicated than that. I feel like a lot of the world is a lot of gray, and we want things to be in black and white. And I have always rejected that. And, I didn't really want to call myself non-binary for a while, because I just felt like, well, that's a specific kind of person that is putting themselves out there politically that way. And I don't want to take away from those people. And then I thought to myself, except that's you, Liz. Like, you aren't male or female. You don't feel male or female. And I would definitely say in my dynamic with Gabriel, we have a very interesting fluid change of male and female between the two of us at all times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I would agree with that sentiment. Growing up, I never really felt like I truly fit in with the boys. And obviously not being physically female, it kind of left me in this weird position where, like, all throughout my life growing up, I never felt like I truly fit in anywhere. Yes, I could, kind of macho it up a little bit if I needed to. I definitely enjoyed the company of women more, and felt more of like, I was able to get deeper connections with women. But then I never also felt truly female in that kind of way. And as these new terms came up, non-binary fell into my radar, and I was like, oh, I think this is what I am. This is a way to describe me, even though I know I don't, traditionally present as like a typical non-binary person. But it shouldn't be about looks. It should be about how you feel. And
Yeah.
that's how I've never really felt like I've been a part of any gender, even though I know, like, an argument we made that I definitely look very masculine.
Mm-hmm.
Which I also think that's part of the reason why he has continually attracted lesbians, is because he doesn't, he has such a beautiful feminine energy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, I so appreciate you both sharing about that too, and kind of your journeys in that, and what feels, I guess, best for you today, and it seems like throughout your life too, of like, this never really felt like I don't know, I just love the ability to just like knock down those paradigms and just be like, what works for me? What works for us? We can play in those roles. We can play in those spaces. And that's what I believe that we should all be able to do.
and it hasn't always been possible either. Like, when I was younger, I got a lot of pushback when I started saying I was bisexual. I had a lot of people saying, you're on the fence. You need to make a decision. You need to choose. And then when I got a little bit older, I was with a girlfriend who was in Boston at the time, and she was very feminine. And I was very feminine presenting at the time. And we had a lot of pushback in the lesbian community in Boston because we were two femmes together. And what's wrong with you? There also is an underlying racial issue going on because she's Black and I'm white. And Boston, as we all know, has a history of some interesting racial tension, which I would say has dissipated and was just as racially tension. There's as much racial tension in Boston now as anywhere else in the United States. But back, in the early 90s, things were a little different. So, yeah, I've always been the kind of person where I'm kind of like, all right, I don't really care if all of you in this subset group still think that I don't belong in your subset group. That's fine. I don't care.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious. I mean, it's so amazing that you two found each other and sort of both feel sort of the same way. And I'm just curious what that's been like for you two in terms of your ability to explore parts of yourselves, play with different parts of yourselves, learn about new parts of yourselves. What has that been like for you, the two of you, for the last few years?
Amazing. Very, very freeing. And I always describe my love for you as being swept up in an ocean, and just that feeling of lying back and just floating off. And that's kind of how it's been for the past 3 years.
Doesn't sound so bad.
Yeah. That's me. How about you? How do you feel?
So there is another level to this too, which a lot of the widows that I have connected with, we all talk about how when you've got a new relationship that's serious, it's kind of interesting how you realize that that person's getting the best version of you because you went through so many difficult things and so much emotional growth and so much self-reflection through the process of losing your spouse and being a widow. And so I feel like I am having the best life I have ever had. And I have had some really exciting parts to my life. I've danced on stage with Gilberto Gil and Daniela Mercury, which doesn't mean anything to people in America, but it sure does to people in Brazil. And the Buena Vista Social Club. And I've had some exciting, lovely friendships and times in my life. And I can honestly say this is the best time of my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That's incredible.
I'm curious, Liz, if you're open to talking a little bit about the experience of grieving your husband while also being in another partnership, while also, looking for informing new partnerships. And I can just, there's probably so much in that we could probably do an entire episode just about that. But if you're open to talking a little bit about that and what that experience was like for you or has been like for you.
I joked, but it's true. I've joked that we started off our relationship being in a polyamorous dynamic already because Josh was still here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There was a third person in the room at all times. And Gabriel was so beautiful about embracing that and accepting that and encouraging me to pass through my grief. And I mean, that was one of the reasons why I knew immediately I wanted to be with him, because he was doing such a good job of that from the very first date. And it blew my mind. Mind you guys, I went out on that first date thinking, oh, I'm just going out with this guy who's 20 years younger than me. This is not going to be a real relationship. This is just going to be a roll in the hay. And oops. That's not what happened at all. But I do think me being polyamorous made it so much easier to make that step from losing that first spouse and starting a relationship with someone new that was very serious. And of all of my friends, only one of them took an issue with it at all. And all of the rest of them thought and said to me, it makes total sense. You and Josh had multiple partners through the years. Why would you not necessarily be open to another person right now? And it's different. It's not the same as when your partner's alive. It's not. But there's definitely that sensation of we are already in a dynamic that involves a third person somehow. And as time has gone by, and my grief journey has continued, I've integrated a lot of the pain that I was in, and I am not in pain anymore. I don't know. I think maybe around the first year mark was when I started doing so much better that way. Yeah.
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 Year and a half.
Year and a half. I mean, there were times when, Gabriel would hear me wailing. What's going on? If I'm just having a grief wave. Grief waves come. There's nothing you can do about it. I do think it's interesting in my TikTok community, because I have a TikTok community that's of widows and the TikTok community is of polyamorous people. It's been interesting in the TikTok community how one of the things we all share is that it's more people have to talk about being widows. More people have to talk about what the grief is, because so many of us, when we entered into it, we just had no idea how earth shaking this was going to be. No one told us. And if there's one thing I guess I wanted to say on this particular podcast about that topic is, and I've met some polyamorous widows on TikTok too, is you will never be able to prepare yourself for losing your partner. It's going to be a wild ride, but you will get through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it sounds like you found support in communities of other widows. And I'm curious, how have they embraced your non-monogamy or polyamory? Because I can also see there being some tension there of like, well, wait a minute, I can't even imagine that. But I'm curious what that's been like for you to navigate that piece.
I think there are some people in the Widow Talk community who completely and utterly ignored me and ignore me, and that's fine. I don't mind. There have been some very interesting relationships developed from people who are from vastly different walks of life. I also have had few widows reach out to me going, watching your videos and listening to you talk about this, I'm starting to think that I might be polyamorous. So that's happened. Just again, like Gabriel's situation, they've never been exposed to it.
Yeah.
Ever. And TikTok is an interesting platform because there are people coming from literally all over the world onto that platform. And they might be in this tiny little town in North Dakota and hear my TikToks and go, that's funny. I never thought about it, but I think that might be me.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And I also am curious on your end, Gabe, like that first year as Lizz was going through, like a year and a half of like really the intensity of that change, right? Like the grief that she was going in, and you also starting this new relationship with the two of you. How was that experience for you?
Yeah. So coming into it, it was hard to see Lizz going through that much pain. And I wanted to try and make myself be a place where she could hopefully heal, or if not, make it a little bit easier. That kind of grief, I don't know. I've been very lucky that I've never lost someone that I've been really, really, really close to. So I can't really imagine what that must have been like for you. But I knew I just wanted to help you get through it, or help you.
He did a very good job.
Help you feel whatever it is that you needed to feel in that time.
Yeah, sometimes it was about just holding space for me to lose my crap,
Yeah.
And then sometimes it was so helpful to have someone so open to talking about Josh, and I could just start talking about whatever I was thinking about him and whatever memory or whatever. And Gabriel was just always ready to listen. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Your relationship, what you've described of your relationship is inspiring, and I think it's amazing. So I'm just grateful we got to talk today.
Yeah. Thank you both so much. I know we could ask a million more questions, but that's
what part 2 is for.
Yeah, I really appreciate you.
We can do a part 2 someday.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Appreciate you coming on together and just sharing everything that you did. And we'd love to just, I guess, ask if there's anything else that either of you wanted to get out there today.
Not that I could think of.
Oh, actually, I guess the one thing I can say is don't say no to the opportunity of a new relationship because you never know.
Yep. Especially at the roller rink. Which I wanted to say, when you shared that, I loved, we talk to a lot of people who will tell us all the time, well, there's no non-monogamous people in my area and there's no events. You're so lucky we're in the Bay Area, or if people are in big cities and you say, well, there's meet and greets, there's munches, there's all sorts of stuff happening. So you have it easy. And to me, like the fact that you two met you were just trying to learn something new and you put yourself out there who you were. And I think that's, to me, a really amazing lesson in here, which is you don't have to go to a non-monogamy event to be a non-monogamous person or to even meet other people who maybe are open to it, even if they're not actively wearing, their poly pride flag around. So it's not about just going to where the non-monogamous people are. It's about doing something for yourself and finding joy, and you will attract other people who share that joy and can be yourself around.
I totally agree with that. And honestly, our long distance partner's the only partner I've ever met on an app. I've always met my partners in the wild.
Yeah.
So.
Would you be open to just talking to that for a moment, Liz? Like how do you do it? Because it sounds like it's not like an all day, every day. You're just like, I'm going to go to this event and that event, and I hope to meet people, but you're just sort of living, or maybe you are.
So I have realized over the last few years that most people think flirting is very difficult. And I am always open and wanting to understand how different people's realities are so vastly different than mine. But that's when I just am kind of like, but flirting is so easy. I flirt like I breathe. I will tell women all the time that I like what they're wearing. I like their eyeglasses. That, girl, you're rocking that outfit. I'll start conversations with strangers. I get phone numbers all the time. And it's not necessarily for a romantic thing. It's just like hey, I really liked you. I really jived with you. We were out 2 weeks ago and went to see a show at Ruth Eckerd Hall. And as we're walking out, some woman was singing. Her voice was amazing. And I started singing along with her because I wanted to get her attention. We ended up spending all evening together. And I was really hoping that she was going to get interested in me. But she ended up being interested in another guy who she thought was interested in Gabriel, who's totally, the guy who's not interested in Gabriel. It was totally fun. That was a wonderful lesson on how bad people are at flirting. I'm like, with all these 30 somethings and nobody knows who likes who. And I'm like, oh my God, why am I the one making sure everyone understands who likes who here?
The poly puppet master.
At the end of the night, when we were taking off, you had a one-on-one conversation with almost everyone there. And you're like, listen, I like you. I think you're cute. But I could tell you're into the other guy. And then she went to the other guy and was like, she is into you, and you told me that you were into her. So go in there and go get her.
the poly puppet master. I love it.
But I think it's I'm not a normal person that way too. I just meet people. I make friends randomly in airports. So it's not going to be that hard for me to find partners in the wild.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And how about on your end, Gabe?
He goes around with Liz and she just makes sure it happens.
Honestly, pretty much.
I mean, I am the best wingman.
I just don't have a lot of opportunities to really meet people. Because I work from home. Well, I work from home. And I guess we share a social life. So the people that I meet end up being people that you have known, or if we're going out, that we'll meet that night together. But I mean, yeah, it's just kind of.
Well, that's true to a degree, except that he does go out to some things on his own. The other thing I will say here, you guys aren't seeing, this is a podcast where you guys aren't seeing the video. My husband is exceedingly attractive. And people are often trying to flirt with him, and he doesn't know what to do.
That's true.
Yeah. No. This is why often I'm the wingman going, no, go.
We all need a wingman.
Yep. I love it. Well, you two are amazing, and it was a delight chatting today. So thank you both for coming on, and one more shout out to Sonia for introducing us. So thank you to Sonia, and yeah, just what a delight to chat today. Before we let you go, is there any final thoughts before we get along with our days, our Friday afternoons?
Go roller skating.
Yeah. hit the roller rink.
Do you two still roller skate together?
We did for like 2 years.
2.5. And we were doing it once a week for 2.5 years.
Yeah, 2.5 years for once a week. But I have realized that I have a balance issue, and I'm still struggling with the very basics of roller skating. And it's kind of hard to enjoy something that you realize you're never going to get good at.
Yeah.
Like at all.
Yeah.
So, well, every now and then I'm like, yeah, maybe we could go this week.
Yeah. But it's still been something you've enjoyed together, at least for what you could.
Yeah, we did. We did for like 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Some Monday night traditions.
Awesome.
Love it. Well,
thank you both again. Yeah. We've loved talking with you, and can't wait till our paths cross another time.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're in the Bay Area, we'll.
Yes.
You know how to find us, and when we come to your Bay Area, we'll look you up as well. Amazing. Well, have a fantastic weekend, and we'll talk soon.
All right, you guys too.
See you guys.
And we're back. Thank you so much, Lizz and Gabriel, for coming on, sharing your story. It was so wonderful to talk with you today, and we're just excited to get this out there. So thank you.
And we're excited for part 2.
Yes, very much so.
I know we teased it, but I'm super excited for that one as well. So yeah, echoing Emma's gratitude from my side. Thank you both for coming on, sharing your story, and just for the vulnerability. Talking about death and grieving is not an easy thing to do.
No.
And we just always are grateful for anybody who's willing to go there with us. So thank you both.
We didn't mention this in the intro because we skipped announcements, but we wanted to remind all of you that our next virtual speed friending event is going to be on January 15th. Mark your calendars. You can go to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, and sign up now. There's a banner at the top of the page, or click on the events tab. We would love to have you come join us.
And next week, we're back with another incredible interview. Next week, we've got Kylie coming on.
Yes.
It's a fantastic conversation that we've been trying to make happen for like years.
It's been a long time.
We finally did it. So super pumped for that. We hope to see you next week. Again, Happy New Year's, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Happy 2025.
Happy 2025. We'll see you in a week.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.